How has agribusiness contributed to environmental injustice in our society? Let's discuss. Before we get started, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more eco-related topics of your interest. For a long time, big agribusinesses has dominated our food systems, focusing on economic growth and corporate gains while ignoring its long-term environmental impacts. Big agribusiness was introduced during the 1950s and the 1960s in the United States, seeking to, quote-unquote, expand the production of food from small-scale local farmers to large-scale corporate business. Agribusiness has heavily altered ecosystems today, though, and modern agriculture contributes to around 10.5% of greenhouse gas emissions in the United States. With climate change making headlines around the world, many governments are measuring the long-term environmental impacts their industries are creating. The term agribusiness was coined in 1957 by scholars John H. Davis and Ray A. Goldberg. They argued that privatizing the agriculture industry would create positive change rather than allowing the government or even its citizens to control the sector. Agribusiness is defined as the production of economic growth through the development of farm crops, including the production, processing, distribution, and the transportation of food. While 70% of the transportation of the world's food is provided by small-scale farmers, food production in the US is dominated by these agribusiness industries. And so when we talk about transnational corporations, we need to think about who's controlling our food supply chains. In the United States alone, agribusiness and food and related industries generate around $1.1 trillion, making it one of the largest sectors of the economy. While the agribusiness has reported making positive change to contributions to the world, such as the production of food, employment, and lower prices for basic commodities, which we need to unpack there about the neoliberal policies, there are still major concerns about its environmental impact. Modern commercialized forms of agriculture heavily rely on monocultural practices, which is the cultivation of a single crop on a large tract of land. Monocultures initially increase yields, but also heavily rely on pesticides, herbicides, and insecticides that lead to long-term soil degradation. A famous case study looked into the production of corn following corn blight in the 1970s in North America, which resulted in the destruction of 15% of crops. The disease spread due to the fact that corn was being grown at a high density, making it easily susceptible to plant diseases. Excessive usage of pesticides, insecticides, and herbicides has destroyed beneficial insects and living beings and bacteria that have promoted plant productivity, that has led plants to be more vulnerable to catching diseases in the year 2021. On top of that, monoculture requires high-intensity water usage for irrigation, and agribusinesses use extractive methods such as collecting water from nearby lakes, rivers, and reservoirs from nearby communities, thereby causing destruction of local ecosystems. With the rapid development of agribusiness across the globe, forests are also being cleared to make room for large monocultures, which we're seeing currently happening in Brazil, which alters its ecosystems and reduces the amount of species, which leads us to the question of what does it mean to have biocultural conservation that respects indigenous wisdom and Western science? While the world produces more food than it consumes, that food still fails to deliver high nutritional content in some cases when comparing native and hybrid seeds. The fruits, vegetables, and grains that are eaten today have lost significant amounts of their vitamins and minerals, which to say it's not to say GMOs are terrible things, but it's to make us question where is soil health going. Scientists have noted that there are such multitudes of reasons for this issue, such as uses of chemical fertilizers, monocultures, and food processing methods. While climate change is getting worse every year, scientists have strongly suggested that we need to rethink the way monocultural and industrial practices are addressed and the damage that they're causing to both human and animal sentient life. But how do we really get there when the methods that have been proposed by indigenous communities require us to critically think about land, food, and seed sovereignty, and we're talking about land back? What does that mean to reclaim our food systems and to localize them from large-scale industries that hold so much political and economic power in the industry today? In order to create a system that is healthy for the environment, Methods like polyculture, agroecology, and regenerative agriculture have been suggested to combat the long-term negative effects of monoculture. However, long-term effects of industrialized agriculture are already apparent in low-income, Black, Indigenous, and people of the global majority communities, whose waters, air, and is contaminated by the chemicals used in agriculture. And so our system for food production is broken and was never designed to really feed us. It was designed for rapid growth and economic opportunities for global north countries. Thus, this has created a long-term environmental injustice and for our planet. And if we really want to continue fighting for equitable food systems, we need to ask ourselves, who are the most closest to our food systems when we talk about food sovereignty, meaning like who gets to be able to define the food systems, which is generally farmers in the global south that have actually had practices in regeneration to ensure that their culture and living species are still connected. If you want to learn more about food systems, make sure to like, subscribe, and comment, and stay tuned for our next video where we discuss industrial agriculture and environmental racism.